Shalom, my friends, from Israel, the center of the world, the Holy Land of Hashem, where His people Am Israel lives. My friends, in Erode, India, I'm delighted and I'm happy. We can continue with our Musar lessons. Today is Shiur 2, Shiur's time, the second lesson of Musar. And before we continue where we left last time, I just want to resume a little about what we learned last week. And today in Israel, it is Yom HaMatzot. That means Independence Day, and we celebrate that we're 72 years already are independent after the World War II. And in these times of Corona, it's a very different way of celebrating it because we cannot come together, we cannot go to the parks, we cannot have big ceremonies all together. But somehow we manage, and we're so happy that we have the opportunity to share our happiness and our gladness with the world and with you in Erode. My friends, last time we started with an introduction and with a few sayings, a few wisdoms of our sages, of our fathers, which are written down in one of the books of the Mishnah. One of the Serarim, the six books or parts of the Mishnah, is Nesikim. Nesikim means damages, and it teaches us all about how we should treat property and material and belongings of others, and how and if something happens to it, how we should take care of it. How can we do a rightful to the other, and also how can others be rightful to us? And within Nesikim, within the Seder Nesikim, there's one chapter or one book that is called Avot, and in Avot are written down the wisdoms of the sages, also called Pirkei Avot. The Musar we are learning is the study and putting in practice of Jewish moral behavior to perfect our character traits and our behavior, so that we may fulfill our purpose in creation, namely to reach spiritual perfection. But before, and maybe I think we didn't talk about it a lot last time. So before I continue about the Jewish part of Musar, let us think about how does the non-Jewish world, so the Goyim, define ethics, moral behavior. That's what we call Musar. The world calls ethics or moral behavior, and they classify it in two levels. And those two levels help them to reach to a certain understanding for ethics, and actually they copied it from us. They borrowed it from us, but we will see that some later in today's shiur. So it's about values and norms. So what are values and norms? You often hear the terms values and norms mentioned quickly together, but they are different. Values are ideals, qualities, or situations you want to strive for. It's like the utopia, what you really would like it to be, or what you really desire to be, what you strive for. And what are values? Values is, for example, well-being, caring, attention, freedom, love, honesty, respect, peace. But as you hear me say those values, I think you already understand that we're not really defining what it is. It are big terms, it are ideals. So in order to know what to do with it, they have norms, values and norms. Values are the ideals. The norms are the rules for how to act, how to accomplish, how to realize those values. For example, honesty is a value, but what is honesty? So the norm can be don't lie or don't steal. So in order to reach the value to be honest, you don't lie, you don't steal, and you can mention other things. We can also see that some values that sound the same are different in different cultures. So honesty in one culture can be different from honesty in another culture. An example, maybe in Europe or in other countries, I don't know, doesn't matter. There are countries that say you're honest if you don't lie. But there are also cultures that say you can lie. It's no problem to lie as long as another person doesn't know. So you're considered honest even if you are lying, as long as the other guy or the other woman doesn't know you are lying. He doesn't feel bad about it, and he just goes with the information you give him or her, and everything is good. It only becomes a problem when the other person finds out you are lying, and then you have a problem. So you can see that in different cultures, honesty is approached differently. Let's talk about caring. Let's say caring for our parents or caring for our grandparents. There are cultures that care for their grandfather and their grandmother by putting them in a house for old people. They live there all with all other kind and nice old people, and you visit them every 2 weeks for 1 hour. You get your coffee, your cookie, and that's okay. But is that really caring? So other cultures say, no, that's not caring. I'm not going to put my grandfather and my grandmother far away in some house with all old people. No, I want them to stay part of the family. So when they're old, they're going to live with us. And they live in the same house with their children and with their grandchildren. And together they are one family. So you see that caring for each other can be different from culture to culture. So we cannot put all the values we have in this big world or small world. We cannot put them, we cannot approach them all the same. Because values and norms can not only be cultural, but they can also be religion related. Values and norms can be group related, can be personal related, and even professional related. And often it happens that when you work for somebody in healthcare or in some other area, that your boss expects you to uphold some values and norms that maybe are not your personal ones, but because he is paying you, he expects you to honor the rules of where you work. The values of a group can be different. The values of religion can be different because you can have another religion than the people around the corner. So what is Musar? So we know now sort of what are ethics and what is moral behavior and how the world defines moral behavior with values and norms, ideals, and rules how to reach those ideals, how to uphold those ideals. But how do we look at it from Judaism? What is Musar? What defines Jewish moral behavior? And what are Jewish moral values? And what are Jewish moral norms? As learned in our first shiur, Am Israel did not invent its own ethics, its own moral principles of how to behave. No, we received it from Hashem at Har Sinai, by the mouth, or through the mouth of Moshe Rabbeinu. So Musar originated in heaven. Torah originated in heaven, as we saw last week. And with Torah, within Torah, and from out Torah comes Musar. Musar is divine moral behavior. It's transmitted, as we said, through Moshe Rabbeinu to Am Israel. And from Am Israel to the rest of the world, if they're open for it. You can find Musar directly in the Torah. Sometimes it's very clear. For example, one of the words or commandments in the Torah is "Do not steal." Okay, so don't steal. Don't take something from another person that is not yours. If you don't pay for it, don't take it. It's not yours. Sometimes values and norms in the Torah are a little bit hidden. For example, honor your father and mother. What is honor? How do you honor your father and mother? What's the ideal, but how do you do it? And then we need the oral Torah to explain this. As we learned, we received at Har Sinai, we received the written Torah, that is Bereshit and Shemot, Vayikra, Bemidbar, Devarim, and we received the oral Torah. The written Torah we call Torah Shebichtaf, and the oral Torah we call Torah Shebe'al Peh. And the oral Torah eventually ended up written. That's what we know as Mishnah nowadays. In the parasha from this week, Achrei Kedoshim, in Vayikra 18, in Leviticus 18, Vayikra 18, we see that Hashem commands us not to follow the practices of the Egyptians. Remember, we're talking about Musar. Okay. Not to follow the practices of the Egyptians and the Canaanites. He says that to Am Israel when they're on their way to the promised land. And what is Hashem referring to? He is referring to the sexual immoralities of the Egyptians and the Canaanites. And we can see that because afterwards he gives all kinds of examples what is not allowed. Hashem says, observe the degrees and the judgment of Hashem in order to live by them. To live by them daily, but also to receive life from Hashem even after we left this world. After we passed away in the Olam Haba. So we receive the written Torah, the Torah Shebichtaf, and the oral Torah, the Torah Shebe'al Peh. And Rav Yehuda Hanassi wrote it down. And we know him as Rabbi. But that was already at the end, like 2,000 years ago. But the Torah originated like 3,500 years ago. So what happened? Okay, Moshe Rabbeinu received Torah and oral Torah, and he transmitted it. He passed it on to Yehoshua ben Nun. Ben Nun, everything that was taught by Moshe Rabbeinu, not only what was written, but what was taught. So how to put in practice Torah. He passed it on to the elders, and the elders to other elders. And then the elders passed it on to the prophets, and the prophets passed it on to the men of the Great Assembly. Then we already are at the beginning of the era of the Second Temple. And after the men of the Great Assembly, or assembly, I don't know how to pronounce it, um, they passed it on to pairs. How should I explain it? Um, it was every time transmitted to one to more persons, but one person was responsible for it, was the head of or the leader of. Um, but after the men of the Great Assembly, um, no, let's say it differently. It was transmitted to the pairs, and that were two who were responsible. And after the pairs, Rabbi wrote it down. So, who were the Leanshe Knesset Hakudolah, men of the Great Assembly? For example, we know them from Tanakh, a few of them. Ezra the scribe, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi, Mordechai, Nehemiah, and many others. A few men of the Great Assembly were prophets. I just named a few, but there are many others also. And why are they called men of the Great Assembly? Because they restored the crown of God's glory to its original luster, beauty, and splendor, which was the second temple and the reinstating, the restoring of the Torah and its mitzvot. Except for a few prophets, however, the majority of the men of the Great Assembly were not of the same spiritual level as the sages before them. So after the prophets passed it on to the men of the Great Assembly, and the men of the Great Assembly passed it on to pairs. And the pairs that were always two of the wisest and well-known sages, and one was the Nasi, like the prime minister, and the other one was the Avbaidin, who was the head of the Jewish court. And we had 5 pairs of them. And after those 5 pairs, the temple got destructed, and the Jewish people were scattered all over around the world. And we learned that Rav Yehuda Hanassi wrote all the teachings, all the oral Torah down in order to preserve the wisdom that we received from heaven. So now we have, in book form or a scroll form, the Torah and the Mishnah. So the Torah Shebichtav, the written Torah, teaches us a lot of divine values and norms. The Torah Shebe'al Peh, the oral Torah, teaches us how to put those into practice, which is what we call halacha. And halacha are day-to-day instructions and divine norms to live by. And within the Mishnah, our source of halacha, we find Seder Nesikim, which what I just said is about damages, how to treat our fellow men in situations where we have damaged something or somebody else, and property of others. And within Nesikim, we find Pirkei Avot, which is the basis, start of a compilation of Musar. And again, Musar is the study and putting in practice of Jewish moral behavior. Why? To perfect our character traits and behavior, so that we may fulfill our purpose in creation, namely to reach spiritual perfection. So how does it work? How are we going to put it in practice? How is it put in practice already? Let's see. So let's give me the same example from just Musar in the Torah. The Torah value is honor your parents. The Torah norm is, one of the Torah norms is how to honor your parents, is that you cannot curse your parents. You cannot say bad names to them, and you cannot wish them a bad life or other bad things you can imagine yourself. Um, so the value is honor your parents. The Torah norm, how do we put it in practice? For example, a child is not allowed to curse his parents, but you can also take a child, so when a father or mother comes in and there's no chair available, he should stand up and give his chair to his father or mother. Or maybe his father or mother has his own chair. You should always give him or her that chair. Um, the Torah also speaks about consequences. If a child curses his parents, which happened in the Torah one time, we read about it. We see that the punishment is stoning. Stoning, yes. So that means that when a child curses, does that mean that when a child curses his parents, he should be put to death? That's really severe and really hard. So how do we manage that? Well, from the Musar point of view, we can see that the oral Torah teaches us that stoning was not and is not a regular practiced halacha. We have no recollection, we have no situation where there was a son stoned for cursing his parents. What Hashem wants us, and what Moshe Rabbeinu taught us, is that we should not stone them directly, and parents should not go to court, to high priest, to complain about their son, knowing that he will be stoned. No, we should seek for another way of correcting this child. Stoning is not only mentioned, stoning is only mentioned by Hashem because he wants to stress, he wants to tell us how important it is for a child not to curse his parents. Hashem doesn't want us to stone our children. Which parent wants to stone his own children? Which parent wants to put to death his own child? No parent. Doesn't sound normal way of behavior. Not from the son, but not from the parents also. No, Hashem wants us to know how important this mitzvah is. We have to be very serious. We have to be very secure about this mitzvah. Honor your parents is about giving them the respect they deserve. It's all about musar. It's about character. The character of the parents, but the character of the child. So it's about correcting our behavior to reach spiritual matureness. Sorry, let's make it. I cannot read my own notes. Yes. Correcting our behavior to reach spiritual perfection. Who needs correction? The child needs correction because he cannot curse his parents. But the parents also needs to learn something, because which parents want his child to be stoned to death? Exactly nobody. So there must be another way to teach him. Second, what could or what can the parents have done or do to prevent this behavior? Because when a child curses his parents, it doesn't come from nothing. There's a history before that. There maybe have happened a lot of things, and the parents could have prevented it, or could have stepped in earlier to make the situation not develop to such a point that the child curses his parents. It says, because it's also written in the Torah that a parent and a father should not, which word is used? I don't remember the word in English, but a father should treat children also with respect. So you cannot put a lot of pressure on them. You cannot treat them very harsh. So it's two ways. And if we are early in the process, we can change our own behavior and we can change the behavior of our child. Okay, some more examples. In the written Torah, it's written an eye for an eye. Literally, it says, if I hurt your eye, then you can hurt my eye. Or then my eye must be hurt. But see we specifically this happen in the Torah or in the Tanakh? No. Why not? Because it's not about literally taking somebody else's eye. If I took your eye or damaged your eye, not on purpose, or even if I did it on purpose. No, the oral Torah teaches us, Musar teaches us, that we have to compensate the other man or the other woman for the damage I have caused to his eye. It's money for eye because he was sick for a long time. He had to pay the doctor. He could not work, and now he has only one eye. So maybe he should change to another job because for the job he was doing, he needs two eyes. So because if I was the one that damaged your eye, then I should pay for all those costs and all those lost income in order for you to recuperate. But if as a punishment my eye would also be taken out or damaged, then we would both be blind in one eye. But what would the first victim, the actual victim, what would he gain by hurting the eye of the one that did it to him? Nothing. Maybe revenge. But Hashem doesn't love revenge only when other people hurt Am Israel. But he doesn't want us to take revenge on each other. So if we hurt the other one eye, the other person's eye also, everything would be off balance. So we cannot take an eye for an eye literally. And we need the oral Torah to explain it. And we also need to understand the Musar part about it. Because it's all about character. I did something to you, I hurt you. Bezrat Hashem, not on purpose, but accidentally. And now I should be more careful the next time, because I cannot turn back time. I cannot change the fact that I damaged your eye. So I should be more careful. Maybe I was not careful enough. Maybe I was not thinking about you, but about other things. So it happened because I was not thinking or not concentrated or not whatever. But it's not about humiliation. It's not about making the other one, the guilty party, feel exactly or make him go through exactly the same pain. It doesn't help anybody. But we should provide a solution for the situation. What is also Musar? Musar is that an ox, an animal that is working for you on the land, while he is working, he has the right to eat from the harvest that's on the ground. We cannot. How do you say that? We cannot make his mouth closed so that he cannot eat. Also, all about respect. It's all about Musar. Animals are also creation of Hashem. And when they work for us, and then when they work the earth Hashem has created for us, they have the right to eat. We have to leave some harvest for the poor. We cannot take everything out of the field, but we should leave the corners. And actually, every morning, in our morning prayer, we recite a part, we pray a part where where it says, "These are the precepts that have no prescribed measure. We cannot measure them. They're important, and it's not sure. There's no written explanation if we receive reward for it or yes or not. It just says we have to leave the corner of a field for the poor. We should make first fruit offerings. We should make pilgrimage to Jerusalem. We should do acts of kindness and study Torah for the sake of Torah itself. Things we should do that makes us a better person. Are there things that makes us correcting our behavior to reach spiritual perfection? We talked last week also about social behavior, not so much, but I would like to say about it that we talked about that we should not end up in idle chatter with your wife or with your husband. Talk about a lot of time, quality time, about things that are important for your spouse. But if it takes too much time and it takes away from the possibility to Torah study, you should not do it. We should divide our time. The thing we didn't touch is that there is moral behavior between men and women. For example, you don't visit, I don't visit the neighbor's wife if he's not there. It's not appropriate. It's not good moral behavior. And though there are a lot of other behavior between men and women that are considered moral Jewish behavior. We men should not look a lot to other women. Look at your own wife. There's plenty to look. You love her. She's beautiful. She looks beautiful. Perfect. But we should not do that to other women. And women, we should not look to men if they're very handsome and good looking and that are not supposed to be the subject of our thinking or the subject of our talking with our friends. The biggest musar, divine moral behavior we have is saving a life. Do you know that although we have all the mitzvot, and we cannot do all the mitzvot at once, but we should do them one at a time, that how important the mitzvah is when there is a situation that you can save a life. Doesn't matter if it's the woman or a man or a child. It doesn't matter if he is Jewish or not Jewish. The moment when there is an emergency situation and you can help and you can save a life of somebody else, you should do it. Are you praying in a minyan? Leave it. Are you busy with some other mitzvah? Are you doing Torah study and you see something happening outside of your house? Leave your Torah study and save the life. Saving the life is the most important thing to do. That's why the rabbis in Israel and the world decided when this Corona crisis started that we could not come together anymore in the Beit Knesset, in a synagogue, to pray together, because that would make us vulnerable to the Corona disease. No, we are we're obliged we must save lives first, our own lives and the lives of our fellow men. If you go in this corona crisis, anyhow to the Beit Knesset with your friends, and you come together, you stay close, and you do not wear masks. Do I have a mask here somewhere? Oh, cannot reach it. And you do not wear your mask. You're not only endangering your own life, but you're endangering the life of the other. So the rabbi said that all the instructions that the government, the Israeli government, gave and gives to the people to save lives, we should listen and we should do what they say, because that is Torah. So we see that Musa goes far on beyond the letter, the actual mitzvot. Goes much deeper. It goes within. It changes us. It forms us. It corrects us. And Musa should not be something you do, but it should also be something you think about. Because when you think about it, you will change. If you only do, and the moment is over, you can forget. But if you think about it, you will change. Okay, so we are at the beginning of Avot, and we have still a lot to learn. So let's continue where we left off last time. But I want to say that I also want to learn afterwards with you some other book. See if I can grab it. We will start with Avot, but the Ramchal, Rav Moshe Chaim Lusato, wrote The Path of the Just, Mesilat Yesharim. And Rabbi Yisrael Salatar said about this book, all the classical works of Musar demonstrate that man must fear Hashem. The Mesilat Yesharim tells us how. How can we live a life in the way of God? How can we live a life being just? The path of the just. But we will do that in about a few weeks when we finished Avot. Last part of the introduction is on. Okay, I want to share one thought that Rav Moshe Chaim Lusato, a famous rabbi who wrote very deep things about Musar, and we're going to study it because I think you will love it. If you love Musar from Avot, you will love even more Musar from Rav Moshe Chaim Lusato. One thing he said in another book of him, The Way of God, he says that we receive from God the power to earn perfection. However, it must be through our own free will and desire. Nobody can force us, nobody can force another to earn perfection, to live a Jewish, moral, high behavior life, because somebody else says you need to. It must come from within. You have to have, you need and you have to have a desire from within to strive for spiritual perfection. Think about it. I can tell you to have Jewish moral behavior. I can tell you you need to reach spiritual perfection. But if it doesn't come from within, it doesn't help. Okay? So if you're listening to this here and you you say, yes, I want this, listen to what I share with you, Listen to what our sages tell us and think about it. Not just do, just think about it and talk about it with your friends. Great. Let's see. So then we continue where we left off, and we left off. The last thing we talked about last week is that we should give everybody the benefit of the doubt, and that was written as judge every person favorably. And we're going to continue with Ishai Harel, and he says, distance yourself from a bad neighbor and do not associate with a wicked person, and do not disregard the possibility of retribution. So we see two things here. It talks about a bad neighbor and it talks about a wicked person. A bad neighbor is an mishachen ra. And a wicked person is een larasha. Schatje, wil je niet met me praten? Even, ik ben een les aan het geven. Het mag. Het mag. Oké. Mishachen ra. Distance yourself from a bad neighbor. A person should not live or be close to a bad neighbor. Ra is the bad, is evil, what we do to our fellow man. And the other word, la rasha, is translated as wicked. That refers to someone who acts evenly towards heaven. So we should not live close by people or even be neighbors of people that are a bad person, that do bad things, that are not good behavior, that hurt other people, that is not okay. And why shouldn't we not be close to them? Because if we live close to those people, it will affect us. We see in Torah, when Korach rebelled against the authority of Moshe, we see a striking example of negative influence, because who lived close to the Leviim, the Reubenites, the people, from the tribe of Reuben. So when Korach rebelled against Moshe, he also infected and affected the people of the tribe of Reuben. And a lot of them agreed with them. And why? Because they lived together. They lived next to each other. So Korach had a bad influence, not only on his own people, on his own tribe, but also on the tribe of Reuben. So if we know that somebody is a bad person and does bad things, then we should not go live there. And if it happens when you already live there, we should not be close to them or even seek a possibility to live somewhere else. I know it's not easy to say that, but it's what the Mishnah says. Because an evil person does not feel himself bound to the strictures of Torah. So if you want to hold up Torah, but your neighbors are not, it's very difficult. What we also see, that's about do not disregard the possibility of retribution, is if there is a sanction on what you did, it can hurt also the people around who are close to the bad person. We will see. A wicked person is a rasha, and he acts evilly towards heaven. For example, he doesn't hold up Shabbat, he eats whatever he wants. But he is not acting badly to his neighbors or to his fellow men. Therefore, Whereas with regard to a wicked person, it is sufficient not to associate with him. With regard to a bad person, not only not associate with him, but uh, also distance yourself. You don't want to be related with a wicked person. If you love Torah, you should not be all the time with persons that do not love Torah. If you want to keep the mitzvot, you should not uh, go to places voluntarily where they don't hold up Torah, where they don't do mitzvot, because it will affect you. And you don't want that. The punishment visited on an evildoer can come suddenly and without warning. But let me give a more easy example. If a person talks Lashon Hara, and we see that in the parasha of last week, Tzarat Metzorah, when you can get Tzarat on your body, but it can also come in your clothes or in the walls of your house. Well, if you live to a person who is acting badly or is talking a lot of Lashon Hara, and Lashon Hara is talking about other persons and making them look bad in the eyes of other persons, or even positive things talking, but it's not your business talking about those other persons. We call it Lashon Hara, bad talk, a bad tongue, a bad language. So when your house is infected with Sarat, and to the process the Kohen takes to decide if it is Sarat or not, and after a week there's still Tzarat when he closes up the house and he comes back, and there's still Tzarat where it became worse. He says, then the walls where its Tzarat shall be must be tear down. The stones must be taken out and thrown away. But if you are the neighbor of that bad person and you live next to each other and the wall is torn down between you and him, because that's the wall with Tzarat, it affects you immediately because suddenly your house is also open. So that's why we should not be close to people that are a bad neighbor, a bad person. That's why we should not associate with them, not be close to them, in order that it does not affect us. And we should distance ourselves also from the wicked person, because we don't want the people to think you're learning Torah, but the people see you all the time in the presence of people that don't learn Torah. They won't believe you. It affects you. 1.8. Yehuda ben Tabai and Shimon ben Shatach received the Mesorah from them. Yehuda ben Tabai says, do not make yourself like the legal counselors, and when litigants stand before you for judgment, they should both be as guilty in your eyes. Point. Guilty in your eyes. Okay, do not make yourself like the legal counselors. It actually talks about justice. It doesn't sound like Musar, it sounds more like mitzvot. What it's talking about is that it's actually written for judges, that a judge should not act like a lawyer. Because a judge knows perfectly how he and other judges would rule a situation where you need a judge. But if a judge is going to talk with the defender or talk with the one who is complaining about somebody, he is actually helping him how to use the right words and how to present his case in order to make the judges believe him. And we should not do that. A lawyer can do that. We can help other people legally, but a judge should not do it. And then the sentence, when litigants stand before you, so the complainer and the defender stands before you, they should both be as guilty in your eyes. But if somebody is complaining and somebody is defending, one of them is guilty and one not. So what is it talking about? It's talking about that we should be honest when a case is brought to court. We should not be one person favoring, because maybe one person is rich, has a very good name, and maybe he's a friend of a friend. So then you are it's easy for you to think that the well-known rich person should be is talking the truth, and the poor, not well-known guy or woman is not talking the truth. No, Hashem says, before you start a case, consider them both as guilty. Just is a mindset. If you have to judge a situation, both are guilty. At the end, when you finished the case and you give the verdict, and the person that is proven guilty by you, by the judge, I mean, receives the verdict, maybe he doesn't agree on it, but he says, okay, I don't agree on what you say, but you are the judge and you have ruled this and this, so I will keep your ruling and according to what you say. So he respects what the judge says, and he respects the ruling. From that moment on, we should consider them not guilty. So before a court case, both are guilty in your eyes, and after ruling, they should go away, and none of them will be guilty, because the one you just guilty received from you the correction, what he should give back, what he should pay, what his punishment would be, and that closes the case. So after your judgment, you should consider them both not guilty. But when they depart from you, from before you, after judgment, they should both be as virtuous in your eyes once they have accepted the verdict on themselves. After they accepted what the verdict is, we don't talk about it anymore. The person who has to do something, what the judge said he should do or correct or pay, he does it, and the case is closed, and both are not guilty. Very important, because we can have a thought about a case that came before judgment, and even if the judge says he's not guilty or he is guilty and he has to pay a fine, and afterwards, weeks afterwards, you still think about that person because of what he did. But Hashem says we cannot talk about other persons about what he did. Persons are not their past. Persons, our fellow men, are what they are today. If God forgives them, if we forgive them, if he paid his debts, if he changed his behavior, then we consider him or her as the person who he is today. 1:9. Shimon ben Shattach says, interrogate witnesses extensively, but cautious with your words, lest they learn from them to lie. There are instructions on how we should how judges should interrogate where do it start? Witnesses thoroughly. A judge should look for every angle possible in order to get the case clear. And in Proverbs 10:19 says, in an abundance of words, offense will not be lacking. So we should seek and ask and investigate. There are even rules. When witnesses come to testify in court, says the Mishnah, says Rashbam, they are individually asked 3 sets of questions. Hakirot, there are a set of 7 questions that pinpoint time and place. The second set of questions are called Deshirot, they're inquiries. We ask them about relevant particulars about the case. Tell this, and how was such, and why was it, and what do you think? We repeat questions. And then the third set of questions are Bekidot, examinations, supplementary questions concerning other details of the incident. And the judge has to ask around all kinds of things in order to decide who is talking the truth or what is the situation and how should he judge. But there is a kind of restriction. He should formulate his questions in a manner. Oh, that's because we didn't read that. Interrogate witnesses extensively, but be cautious with your words, lest they learn from them to lie. You must be careful if you investigate a situation that you don't ask so much questions that the witness is actually learning from you what you want to hear or what you don't want to hear. So be careful in a case where you have to judge that you use not too much questions and that you seek out your words properly. 110. Shammai and Avtalion received the Mesorah from them. Shammai says, love work, hate lordliness, and do not make yourself known to the government. Love work. It's very healthy to work. It's good for a person to work. So love work for the work itself, just to be active. Even if you have the possibility not to work, it is healthy for a person to work or to do something. Not to sit all day on his chair looking outside. Physical labor is also beneficial for your health, says Machzor Vitri and Magen Avot, because it makes the energy flow around and go out your body, so you need to take in other energy. But obviously, we should not neglect Torah study. We should find a balance between Torah study and the things we work or do. Shammai says, love work and hate lordliness, so don't be lazy, and do not make yourself known to the government. So a kind of critical thing. So first of all, for example, Hillel, a very well-known sage of our Mishnah, Hillel was also a woodchopper. But why was he a woodchopper? He was a very intelligent rabbi. So why was he a woodchopper? Another kind of intelligent, other kind of work. Because woodchopper was a simple work for him. So he had not to study too much to do it. He just could do his work, earn his money, and the time that was left he could use for studying Torah. If he would choose a work that used a lot of his brain and a lot of his time, he would have less time to think about Torah. So he chose a simple work in order to provide for an income and to have left enough time to study Torah. So don't be lazy, but also don't feel yourself too high not to accept the kind of work. You think yourself as a very educated and high society person, but still you need to work, and it doesn't matter if it's not an important work. And then we should not make ourselves known to the government. Do not make yourself known to the government officials for the purpose of being appointed by them to a position of authority, for it is not advisable to seek such positions One should not become overly friendly with government officials because such relationships have very determinal effect on one's spiritual and moral principles. There's no need for us to relate very much to high positioned people. What for us is important to be a holy kadosh people, to learn Torah, to come close to God, to treat our character, our behavior through the divine moral behavior of Hashem, through Torah, through Musar. We should be open to change our character, and we should not be open to high positions. High position, we cannot take a high position with us in the Olam Haba. What we can take with us is what we learn from Torah. My dear friends, the rehearsal, the compilation of the last tour took quite a time, and we reached to talk about a few verses from Avot. But for now, we'll close this shiur, and I hope you discuss about it with your friends. You discuss about it with your leaders. You learn from it. You overthink it, and try to find out what it can, how you can implement it in your own life in order to reach spiritual perfection, to change our character traits, to change our behavior towards divine moral behavior. Shalom, shalom. Till next time.